Texas high school football is so full of remarkable stories and remarkable figures, which is what makes the sport such a joy to cover. And I know that one guy who really captured the hearts of people, not just across the state of Texas, but also across the nation and the world, was Newton coach WT Johnston, the late WT Johnston. And there is a new book out about his life, Between the White Lines, Coach WT Johnston's Determined Pursuit of Ultimate Victory. And here to talk about this is the author of this book, a director there at Fox Sports Southwest. We're joined by Dave Burchett. Dave, thanks for stopping by.
Oh, my pleasure.
First and foremost, tell me about how the idea for writing a book about WT Johnston came about.
Well, I was assigned his game. I was assigned the Newton game in 2014 when they did not win. So I was a little bit familiar. I knew he was struggling a bit with his health. But after that, he kind of dropped off my radar. And then I got assigned his game again in 2017. And then he was telling his story, and someone asked him about what was going on. And a couple of things he said just really tweaked my interest, and a remarkable response to adversity. And he said, well, people say I should write a book about my story, and I just kind of perked up because I'd written some books. So I contacted him after they won the state championship, and we just became instant friends, became very close, and his story was even better than I imagined.
He's a guy that people know about his health issues. He had the very rare graft versus host disease,
right.
that came from his double lung transplant. But the thing that always struck me about WT is that from a mental perspective and from between the ears and from an emotional perspective, you'd never know it. I mean, this is a guy who, even when his body was failing him in ways that we can't even fathom, he always had his kids on his mind. He always
right.
had the community on his mind. That to me is the legacy of WT Johnston.
Absolutely, and that's what really struck me when we talked to him on the conference call before the 2017 game. Ron Thulin was doing the game, and Ron said something on, Coach, I'm really sorry for what you're going through, and it's just like WT said, stop. I've been given a great gift, and you just like, you recoil to that because he's suffering and he's in pain and he can't breathe. He says, no, Ron, I've been given a great gift. A lot of people don't know what their lives mean. Maybe they drop dead of a heart attack or car wreck, but because of what I'm going through, I have this gift of knowing what my life is meant, and I have this gift of being able to teach my kids what it looks like to live until you die. And I'm just sitting there just with goosebumps going, who is this guy? I've got to get to know this man.
He was a remarkable gentleman there, the coach of the Newton Eagles. Passed away this past off season. I'm interested in what your conversations with him were like. Obviously, when you write a book about his life, you're going to talk to him for a while, and anybody who talked with WT Johnston knows that you can kind of pull the string and let him go.
Right.
I'm interested, could you kind of characterize broadly what your conversations with him were like?
Well, we went to Newton. My wife and I went down to Newton to meet WT and see if this project was going to work. And the very first thing that happened, I've known this guy for minutes, and the first thing he says to me is you are not staying at the Holiday Inn Express. I'm offended if you want to stay at the Holiday Inn. You're staying with me. And so you're just immediately, you're like old friends. And he just starts talking about his life and his story. And he has a very interesting life and a lot of starts and fails early. So he's a good story for kids to know that, everything doesn't always go perfectly, and that you can still keep going and end up in the right place. But he is just an open book. A remarkable man, fun to talk to. One of the really fun things that people don't know about is I direct the Ranger broadcast, Texas Rangers broadcast. He's a huge Ranger fan. So from the point I got to know him, like almost every Ranger game, I get a text from WT. What are they doing? Why are they pitching this guy? Why aren't they pinch hitting this guy? Just constantly, like I had some control over it. And this kind of tells you what WT was like. At the end, he lost his eyesight. He essentially had lost his vision, but he still had the Ranger games on. And so the Rangers had some sort of a meltdown. The bullpen had melted down.
No way.
WT sends me a text, and he goes, "I got to tell you, brother, this is tough even for a blind guy to watch."
That is pretty vintage WT Johnston.
That is him in a nutshell right there.
It really is. It's Dave Burchett, the author of Between the White Lines, new book out about WT Johnston. This is a bit of a broad question. I don't want to blindside with it, but what surprised you whenever you talked with him? I think a lot of people are familiar with his story. Maybe they're familiar with his message, especially that interview he did after last year's title game against with Sarah Merrifield on Fox Sports Southwest, which went viral all over the world. About live until you die and the great message he sent. What about it when you were talking with him? What about him surprised you about him?
I think just his unvarnished honesty, and I think, and I would tell you, he was constantly on me. He says, "Don't make this anything about racial issues." Mm-hmm. But I said, "Coach, in our culture right now, we almost have to make that a part of your story because it's who you are." But I think what amazed me about WT is I don't know if you can be colorblind. I mean, that denies who the other person you're talking to is. But if I have ever met a human being that's color indifferent, it was WT Johnston. It didn't matter to him. It truly didn't matter. It was the content of it's what Martin Luther King dreamed about. It's the content of your character that he cared about. And he truly was color indifferent. And it went back to his dad taught him that, because his dad was, from Oklahoma, kind of a rough guy, went to the Korean War and found himself in combat with a black partner. And he had never even met a black person up until that. And they realized in combat that it doesn't matter what color you are. It's who's got your back. And he taught WT that, and he lived that. And stories in the book about how his dad taught him that, and basically taught WT, you aren't born a bigot. You have to be taught that.
Well, and I think anybody who knows, Newton is an extremely diverse town. It is and in many ways, one of the things I always admired about WT, and one of the reasons I think he was such a good coach, not just because he was a great football mind, and not just because he inspired people, but because it felt like he really fit with that community.
Absolutely.
And even after his passing, you saw the outpouring of love, the support he had from the Newton community that really made it special. And I know being ingrained in Newton was very, very important to him as well.
Oh, absolutely. He loved that community, and he said over and over that if the best job in the state of Texas came open to coach, he would want to be in Newton, because that's where his heart was. He loved those kids. He loved that community. And the way the community stepped up when he went through all of his medical issues that you talked about, when he was literally dying in Houston. And there's a remarkable story in the book about what happened, the miracle that happened when he was dying, literally dying. And Debbie, his wife, was just trying to make the decision, do we bring him home to die? And the community, this little community, which is not a wealthy community, they set up an account for the Johnstons, and it was like It's a Wonderful Life, where they all came and they dumped the money for George Bailey on the desk. They would go to the bank and just put money in. And Debbie told the story that they had a debit card, and whenever they checked the balance, there was always money there from this little community that is not wealthy, and it's just a tribute to the kind of place it is.
Yeah, and one of the things, he stepped down as the head coach and athletic director back, I think, basically after the season.
Right.
They recently promoted Drew Johnston to be his head coach, and we were talking about this beforehand. It seems like, sometimes the no-brainer thing in high school football doesn't happen.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But I will say that certainly seems like, it's not just WT, but that entire Johnston family that is so ingrained in the community. It seems like Drew Johnston was just such a perfect hire for
Drew is amazing. He obviously has been mentored by his dad. He played in the system. He's coached in the system. He understands everything about that culture. And what have they had now? He's the fourth coach in 40, 50 years. Coach Barbet, Curtis Barbet, was there forever. And then, WT, unfortunately, was only there for 8 or 9 years because of his health. But that's that's a place that when you go there, you stay there basically until you die.
It's Between the White Lines, Coach WT Johnston's Determined Pursuit of Ultimate Victory, with written by Dave Burchett. And I'm interested to close this out. Can you tell us about your last conversation with WT? What was the last time you got to speak with him?
It was in May,
Yeah.
and I went down to spend some time with him, ostensibly to just go over some details of the book and to make sure I had everything accurate. And when I got there, it was clear he was not having a good day. He was having real difficulty in breathing. His lungs were failing, and he was in a lot of pain. He still answered all my questions, still complained about the Rangers, but it was clear that he was not doing well. And so I just said to him, WT's a man of faith, and I am a man of faith, and I just said, WT, you need to rest. And I said, would it be okay if I just prayed with you?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just got down on a knee and took his hand, and we just prayed together. And one of the things that he always said, being a man of faith, is keep your eyes on the cross. Mm-hmm. And I just said, and I just want to close with this, to WT, keep your eyes on the cross. And the last word he said to me was a very loud and hearty amen. Mm-hmm. And he passed a few days later. He was
a remarkable man, and I know that his legacy down there in Newton is gonna live on for a long time. And it's one of those things that the word viral is such like a naughty word sometimes, but like you want to talk about going viral for the right reasons,
right?
And it's odd to think about that as like a lasting legacy for
right.
WT Johnston, but that message that he gave to Sarah Merrifield on the field after they won that state championship game against Newton, or against Canadian rather, it resonates with
right.
so many different people. And every day I'm so glad that he got that message out
right.
to probably a wider audience than he ever thought he would ever reach.
I think the last time I checked, it was well over 3 million people that had seen that. I've got some mileage on my my career, but this man really impacted me. And what he said in that interview, I have taken away when he talked about how the kids wanted to win it for him. Mm-hmm. And he said, no, this is not about me. This, I'm not going to be around much longer. This is for you, because you'll have this for the rest of your life. And then what he said next is so impacted me. He said, if I've done this right, a piece of me will always be with these kids. Mm-hmm. And I thought, isn't that what we want to do as fathers, as employers, as friends, as coaches? Whatever you do, isn't that what we want? If we've done this right, a piece of us will live in the people we impact forever. And I just thought, wow, that's remarkable.
Sums it up, and it sums up a great man as well. WT Johnston, the book is Between the White Lines, WT Johnston's Determined Pursuit of Ultimate Victory. It's by Dave Burchett. How can people get this? I know that it's coming out really, really, really soon.
Yeah, it's available on Amazon, mm-hmm. Barnes & Noble. Mm-hmm. Online, I'm not sure what the in-store availability, but all of the normal online outlets, mm-hmm. It'll be available.
Well, it's a story worth reading about a man worth reading about, and I think you've done people a great service by and done WT a great service and the Johnston family by chronicling it. Dave Burchett, the author of Between the White Lines, Coach WT Johnston's Determined Pursuit of Ultimate Victory. Dave, appreciate your time, and congratulations on the book.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.